So Guru had the members of the community working tirelessly. When I first came to Skanda Vale, the first thing that he did was he got me a dog, beautiful dog, called Lester. And Lester was a Newfoundland Alsatian cross. It's such a beautiful personality. And so initially, what I would do every day is that I would walk to the woods and I would bring back branches from the forest with a bill hook, walking backwards and forwards. How many miles I walked in a day, I don't know. And then I cut them up with a rusty saw because we didn't have any money in those days, so we didn't have a new saw blade. Certainly weren't chainsaws or anything. It was a rusty bow saw. And I'd spend 7 or 8 hours a day doing this to light 2 fires. One was the fire in Guru's house and the other was the fire for Vale the elephant. And I did that every single day. And then he thought, oh, it would be nice to have some cows. So he got a cow and a bull. Well, the cow was called Prani and the bull was called Tambura. And they were dexters, so they're miniatures. They were very small and they were very young when they came here. So I had this cow and this bull and I still had to go and get the firewood with the dog. And then because you have a cow and a bull, you need a house for the cow and the bull. So you have to build a house because you have a cow and a bull. And then the cow and the bull need a field to go and eat grass in. And so you have to build a fence to keep them in the field. And then because the cow's black, you have to make a shelter to stop the cow getting too hot. This is Guru's way of teaching. Huh? So it's like, it's not just a cow and a bull, it's a cow and a bull, a house, a field, a fence. And like Guru came to me one day and said, oh, I've arranged with one of the monks to sort out the fencing materials for you. And I thought, oh, great. So, because I can build the fence. Because the cows were in and it was becoming summer, I was getting pressurized by Guru. Why haven't you got the cows out? He wasn't interested in the fact that I hadn't built a fence. It was just, it's your job to get the cows out. You find a solution. So it's like, and while they're in, it's extra work because you have to muck them out every day, which takes several hours. So then the fence materials was actually some trees that had blown over in the wind and the electricity board had cut them down because they'd fallen on a line. So that was my fence posts, these trees. So I had to convert trees into fence posts. And that was done through a 2-man saw and a load of splitting wedges and a bill hook. And so I had to find another person to help me cut the trees into 6-foot lengths and then split each section. And there are trees like that. And if any of you have ever had the joy of splitting very large pieces of wood with metal wedges, you know the fun when your metal wedges, you only have 2 or 3 wedges. When the wedges get stuck in the wood, it's actually not, it takes probably an hour to try and get the wedges out with a combination of bits of metal and this, that, and the, and it's like quite frustrating. But anyway, I managed to split them. Then I had to point each post by hand and then carry each one about 500 meters to the field where they would be banged in, not with a tractor and a fence post bonker, but with a hand hammer. And then we didn't have wire, so I had to split all the rails, and I bought a bucket of nails to bang the rails on the posts. So it took me the whole summer to make one section of the field. And whilst this was going on, Prani and Tambura were growing up. And like all young people, as they grow up, they develop certain feelings. And so Prani was a thoroughbred and Tambura wasn't. And so Guru decided that actually he didn't want Tambura serving Prani because he wanted her to have pure Dexter calves. So I then had the job of when Prani was coming on heat, I had to separate Prani and Tambura. And if you've ever tried to physically restrain a bull when a cow is on heat, it's quite challenging. It really is challenging. And so that was another exciting part of this drama. And then I had to learn how to milk a cow, okay? So I'm still having to go to the woods to collect the wood for the elephant fire and look after the dog and the cows. And then I had to learn to milk a cow. And I'd never banged a nail in, I'd never split wood, I'd never done any of this. This is when I first came to Skanda. And so I had to learn how to milk a cow. And then, so you've got this cow who's never been milked before. And of course, the first thing that happens when you try and milk her is she kicks you. Bam, like that. Not just like, but absolutely walloping, great big kick. And so that was a challenge, working out how to extract the milk without her kicking the bucket over or kicking me. But after lots of trial and error, I managed to do it. And it brings out certain facets of your nature, like frustration, impatience, even a little bit of sort of expletives coming out every now and again. And, the longer it takes to do this, the less time you have to go and collect the wood, and then you're getting hassled by Swami Karuna because his elephants got cold or whatever, or Guru saying, I've got visitors tonight, why haven't you done the fire? So, and then when you just about begin to get it sorted out, Guru says, I think it'd be really good if you took over the deer. And then, would you like to look after the temple? The Murugan temple. So, yeah, I'd love to do this. I'd love to look after the temple. And, the sort of every time you sort of, you get some type of program, you get some type of order and system, and you master some type of work, job that Guru's given you. Just before you get to that point where you've mastered it, something else comes. And he's always, it's like he's giving you this greater sweet, I thought it'd be really nice if you could, you could look, light up the temple and clean the murtis and yeah. So yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah. So that's another job, another responsibility. And then it went on and on and on. And I would get up at 4:30 in the morning. And as well as this, Guru's going on and on about you. If you have to do your own sadhana. Never mind the karma yoga. What about your own spiritual sadhana? Your own. Never mind the public pujas. We didn't have a Shakti temple in those days, all Ranganatha temple. So it was a 5 o'clock puja, 1:30 puja, 9 o'clock puja. And we had to go to those pujas, even if you were dying. You had to go. You could not miss a puja. Doesn't matter how ill you were, you had to go. I used to live in Guru's house down the end of the corridor. Where he had these like Irish terriers. He had 3 Irish Terrier dogs, and so I used to have to climb over the Irish Terriers, and I'd be in this little room at the end, up on a shelf. That was where I lived, up on this shelf, and so I'd come back to my shelf after the morning puja, and I'd do my own puja there, and then it was breakfast, and then it was working all day, and then blah blah blah, and then Guru then wanted me to do a puja in his room as well at 6 o'clock in the evening. So I'd do that puja, and then I'd go down for 9 o'clock puja, and then come back up and do another puja. So I ended up on like 4 hours sleep and working outside all day for probably the first 4 or 5 years. I was in Skanda, and I was absolutely exhausted, totally and utterly exhausted. And I started getting quite miserable and grumpy. And Guru called me up into his room one day and said, "What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you?" He said, "I can't do anything with you." He said, "You've got to bend. You can't be like this tree that doesn't move in the wind. You've got to have flexibility. You've got to be able to move and flow with everything." He said, that's the art of spirituality. Your mind, you can't be rigid. You can't say, "I have to do it like this. I've got to do that." You've got to be open and responsive and flexible. So this is one of the main things that he was teaching me. And these lessons went on for many, many years like this. It'd be a lesson over many years to teach you one thing, to teach you how to be open, how to be flexible, how to move like water, like the wind. And so he was beginning to teach me that, away from this rigidity of, I'm on my spiritual sadhana, I have to do it like this. I can't not do this. I can't not do that. And you end up just totally frustrated, totally screwed up. But what's important is that it was like you worship God, you serve God with all your heart, with all your mind and all your strength. He abhorred mediocrity, absolutely abhorred it. If people didn't put their heart into something, he wasn't remotely interested. A person's attitude was the most important thing for Guru, the approach to life. Doesn't matter how many mistakes you made, doesn't matter if you did things wrong, if you messed stuff up. If your intention was pure, if your attitude was right, that is all that genuinely mattered with him. And you see all the time in how he taught, he would be testing people's attitude, their approach to one thing or another. And if their approach was right, he would do whatever he could to look after them. If it wasn't, and if they were involved in mediocrity, if they weren't making an effort, then he would just pile more stuff on them. He'd just crank the pressure. So they had to do something. And it'd be on and on and on and on and on and on at them. And it's like that was, although it was quite traumatic, that was an immense privilege, because he knew exactly which button to press. He knew exactly how far he could pressurize a human being and accelerate them on that path on their evolution. Because you would take it from him, because you knew that he loved you, and what he wanted more than anything was for you to realize your divinity. He didn't want anything from you. His job is just to give, just to serve. But he was joyful for a person when that person applied themselves and that person made an effort and had the right attitude, the right approach. And as the more that you found yourself serving the divine and looking at how you can use your faculties to serve the divine, then you actually begin to realize, even though you're very busy, there begins to be space in your consciousness to receive the impulses of the divine in whatever you are doing. And you begin to there begins to be a reliance on offering your service to the divine and seeking the grace and the guidance of the divine, how you can be of service to the Lord. Because you begin, another thing that you learn, and it takes a long time to learn, and it takes a lot of pressure. Normally, there'll be a project or something will happen, and it'll happen to every single one of us, that you try as hard as you like, and it's like banging your head against a wall, and nothing works, nothing happens, and you try, and you try, and you try. And then you actually begin at that point to learn that you cannot do anything. You're not the doer. It's like when you think, I am trying so hard, I am doing this, I am doing that. And then you get to the point where you're forced to actually offer it, genuinely offer it to divine, because if you don't offer it, you go mad, or you break down, or something happens. You offer it to the divine, and then something happens, something changes, a relief comes, an inspiration comes. And then slowly, that happens many, many times, and slowly your whole approach begins shifting away from, I am doing this, to it just becomes your natural approach to offer every single situation up to the divine and seek the grace from the divine to inspire you how the divine wants you to serve the divine in whatever you're doing. And that goes hand in hand with the shift of being sense orientated to using the senses to serve. So that's like a physical aspect of it, and that's like a spiritual aspect of that alignment, is a shifting consciousness away from I am the one who is doing this to begin to surrender. Really, this is the word surrender. Surrender yourself totally at the feet of the divine, that you become an instrument of the divine, a pure instrument of the divine. That is the progression towards pure karma yoga. That cultivation of that attitude of surrender to the divine. It's society doesn't help, because society is, it's like, you're the one who's done it. You're the one who's studied. You're the one who's put the hours in. You're the one who's done all the work. You're the one who's made the effort, who's gone day after day to do this stuff. It's you who's done that. It's not you who's done that. You get to the point where you actually realize you cannot do anything without grace. And it is the divine within you that provides the motivation, the energy, the power, the opportunity, the resources to do these things. And as long as you think you're doing it, you're driven by your egocentric nature. And that limits you so much. Totally limits you. And when you begin to discover this is the freedom of actual karma yoga or bhakti yoga and spirituality. People think, your life is about spirituality. You have all these constraints, but you don't have constraints. What you gain is total freedom from the constraints of the ego, and so you have this amazing. You realize this amazing, limitless potential that every single person has to be an instrument of the divine. Because the divinity within you is not limited in any way. It's totally unlimited. It is directly connected to the source. Directly connected to the source. So our potential is limitless. Absolutely limitless. And it's our ego, it's our inhibitions, it's our habits of being, our mindset, which puts those limitations in. It's limitless. And when you begin to actually really surrender at the feet of the Lord, and you begin to experience this limitless potential become realized in your life, it's such an amazing experience. This is divine experience. It's not flashes and lights and seeing massive manifestations of Krishna and this, that, and the other. It's a real experience of the divinity embodied within you, your limitless potential. And that comes through surrender, through service, through purification, through alignment of your whole body, your mind, spirit, your environment, all of these things. You get the blocks right. And all of these building blocks are there so you can become free.